Welcome back. You're watching Sunday Edition, where we take a look at the biggest political stories or situations from the week, and of course what we expect in the next week. 23 days to go to the general election. Political temperatures are on the rise, and this previous week has not been a very good one on the campaign trail for both Jubilee and NASA, as they have faced some levels of resistance. For Jubilee in Kisumu and for NASA in Thika town and Githurai areas. Before we get into that conversation, let's take a look at what happened.
Sisi kazi ya maendeleo hatutawacha, na sisi hatupagui nani alipigia nani kura. Hiyo ni shauri yenu. Tutaomba yetu, mkitupatia sawa, mkitupatia pia sawa, lakini sisi maendeleo tutaendelea na kwani kwa namna gani bwana? Si namna hiyo. Ukabila hauwezi ukusaidie na chochote isipokuwa jamii yako ikutafutie bibi. Haiwezi kutafutia. Tunaona wenzangu.
Wakati tutashika usukani, hakuna haja ya ubaguzi na mtu yeyote. Sisi tutakuwa na lengo la kuhudumia Wakenya wote.
Hata kama mkitaka tunaweza kuhamisha Jubilee kwenye mzima. Mkulete nyokolete na hiyo kitu. Tunaweza kuhamisha kuanzia leo mkulete hiyo kitu.
There for the politicians in a number of areas. Husband, I had you making some comment about the people who are chanting, "We don't want Ruto, we want Uhuru."
Yeah, I think it is unfortunate. You know, looking at where we've come from since the first multi-party elections in 1992, we've made serious strides. We've tried as much as possible as Kenyans to be a lot more tolerant than we were during the advent for multi-party politics, and therefore to hear such chants of we don't want so and so, we hear such chants like Jubilee when it is NASA, you know, and you ask yourself, why is this taking us? It is taking us back to the days when the country was zoned into different areas, which is unfortunate. Coming from a political student school of thought, you would understand that democracy, as it were, basically requires that it is ideas that contend. So when you have a crowd that is chanting, we don't want to listen to so and so, you're asking yourself, who is the greater enemy? Is it the person that they don't want to listen to, or the person who has influenced them not to listen? Because ideally, we are supposed to look at what different sides of the political divide offer in terms of ideas on how they are going to address the plight of the people, solve the problems of this country, and take this country forward. Therefore, listening is very important, not just to the electorate, but even to the politicians, so that they learn from each other. And of course, listening to the Deputy President, William Ruto, is kind of refreshing, because he is a good speaker, he articulates issues. But I think the main thing that came out from these two crowds, because you look at the crowd in Kisumu, you'd understand that they actually turned up to listen to Uhuru, President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy. You look at the crowd in Baringo, it is the same thing. And therefore you get the sense that there must have been somebody who influenced a few individuals to disrupt the whole thing. Because you cannot tell me that a crowd can turn up in such large numbers only to cause chaos. No. Okay. And ask yourself, what happened before President Uhuru went to Luo Nyanza? There is a senator who said that the president is welcomed in Luo Nyanza, but the deputy is not, which is very unfortunate. And this tells you that this is a war of some small politicians who want to show the political kingpins, the principals, that, you know, we've locked this area for you. And therefore what they do is that when the other principles from the other political divides come to certain areas, they influence a few people just to show that this area is locked, which is unfortunate.
What does this situation say about Kenya's electorate?
First, I want to agree with him that these things don't just happen. They are made to happen. And it is not the presidential candidates who are making them happen. It is some overzealous supporters on the ground who want to prove that they are the more reliable foot soldiers and that we cannot allow any hostile politics to be done in your territory. And I think that is the lot that the IEBC should focus on, because those are the people who are going to bring us trouble. Because ordinarily, like my fellow panelists has put it, these people honestly went to listen. You know, they might not probably be convinced to vote, but there was enough interest for them to go out and listen to what these other political leaders are saying, besides the ones that are probably popular in there, and that's why they turned out in such large numbers. And you'd be surprised to find that majority of the people who attended these rallies were actually disappointed that they didn't get a chance to listen, because the people who instigate such kind of things are normally very, very few. And you know, at some point it actually becomes fun, and probably the rest also buy in because it's not very chaotic, stones are not being thrown, and it also feels down to shout down some big wig. But the thing is, that is not why they went there. They just bought in after it seemed exciting and the fashionable thing to do as at that particular point. But the reason why they went is to listen to what these leaders have to say.
But if we are to go with the theory both you and Hezbollah are agreeing on, that there are few leaders on the ground who want to show their principles that we have these grounds locked for you. What is the reasoning behind we don't want Ruto, we want Uhuru, when these two are a team? In essence, if you vote for Uhuru, you vote for Ruto. If you're listening to Uhuru, you're technically listening to Ruto.
Yeah, you know, you know, this is politics, and politics is local. And you find that even within a team, there are people who probably stand out for annoying you. Let me put it that way, for lack of a better. Find that they are a team, but of the two, that one is more annoying. And that becomes the local politics. That this Jubilee is probably not bad, but the person who makes it bad is for their own reason. You see, the people who are propagating that, it's not probably necessarily true, but for their own convenience and political expediency, it looks better when they target an individual. And that is what will sell in the ground. Why do you think the whole crowd picked up that of Atutaki? He has put it very well. They had already been directed. A senator had made, actually the Homa Bay senator, because this was in public domain, that they actually welcomed the president, but not his deputy. So these people just picked the queue, because that is what their local politicians want to bring out. And again, is because you know, the deputy president sometimes comes out very strongly when he's communicating, and some people probably don't like that, and they, for their own reasons, decide that he's the easier target to pick, and for political expediency, not for any other. I think that is exactly what happened in Nyanza, and the people had been given a cue by that senator, and other people who probably didn't get as much publicity as the senator, because those sentiments, I also saw them online. So it was not just the senator. I also saw some small opinion leaders also taking the same kind of reasoning, that it will be fine if the president visits Luo Nyanza, but not with the deputy president.
Well, Akisa, there are several issues here. Number one, our politicians have bad manners, bad political manners. A number of them, when they're addressing such kind of audiences, they do not use civil language. They trade on insults, insulting their competition. And the average Kenyan voter now is mature, has got access to news. So the others who take personal offense, that maybe I'm a Jubilee supporter, you're insulting my party leader, I'm unhappy with that. Or I'm a NASA supporter, you're insulting my presidential candidate, I'm unhappy with that. So it falls two ways, that our politicians have to have good manners. You could be a gifted speaker like the deputy president, but when you are addressing a national audience, you need to be very sensitive to your words, because as a deputy president, your words carry a lot of weight. So when you go town saying yule jamaa vitenda wili, yule mganga, the people who look at Raila Odinga as you know, the cumulative, he represents the aspirations, take offense. And coming to the second level, the people who go for those meetings, most of the time do not go there on their own motion. There is active mobilization. If you come across an honest politician, he will tell you those guys were actually branded. The ones in Kisumu, they were in Jubilee t-shirts. So meaning, the previous day or several days before, they must have met with someone who gave them a t-shirt and probably even gave them instructions. But now the buck stops with the Inspector General of Police. When you have such kind of a situation happening at a presidential function, one would have expected that there was a heavy intelligence. There were so many people on the ground, including party activists, who should have been able to pick the signs the previous evening, or even on the material day, and have people to get arrested, so that it serves a lesson. Now, there was heckling in Kisumu, nothing happened. What would the rest of the Kenyans think? They say, okay, you've done it in Kisumu, we are going to wait for your presidential candidate at the next venue and engage in mischief.
But isn't it their freedom of expression? They're just expressing what they feel as a people.
Yeah, for me, I was coming to the second point. I don't have a problem with people heckling. Because heckling is in two ways. There's positive heckling, there's negative heckling. When a politician comes to the podium and is speaking, when it's positive heckling, you see them smiling all the way. But when it's negative, then they start raising temperatures. But the ideal way is like what happened in Machakos. If a politician starts making statements you find inconsistent with the public good, the best way is to take a walk, so that the politician is now able to see your back. But something interesting, and this has never happened before. In the past, political intolerance has been domiciled in Luo Nyanza, that the people were known to be throwing stones. But now we are beginning to see some of the incidences in central Kenya, which raises questions. Are these guys acting on their own motion? Most likely no. Is there somebody who is giving them resources to do this? Yes. As the Inspector General of Police arrested them? No. So when the Inspector General of the Police doesn't do anything, what do the rest of Kenyans think? That this thing is happening with approval from very high levels, and people begin to wonder, when is IBC coming in to discipline this kind of folks? But before IBC comes in, we must look at Keriako Tobiko and Inspector General Boynet and ask them whether they're actually inspiring confidence that we are not going to allow this kind of mischief.
All right, let's take a look at what residents of the county of Baringo had to say on the issue of heckling. Remember, Baringo is one of the areas where NASA even had to cancel their rally over this particular situation. Let's just take a look at what the residents had to say.
Kulikuwa na makaratasi yenye ilikuwa imeandikwa shoot Ruto to kill. Sasa hiyo ilifanya watu wakawa na hiyo uchungu zaidi. Kwa nini wanasema vitu kama hiyo?
Na sisi hatungelipisha kisasi. Na sisi hatukuwa nataka ene askari hata akuja hapo. Sisi tulikuwa nataka tuonyesha sisi ni Jubilee pande hii ya Baringo. Na Raila asipende State House ni ya huru.
Raila alienda Central na akapokelewa. Mbona rais ameenda leo Kisumu akapigiwa makelele? Ndio unaona watu wa Baringo hawakufurahia. Lakini naomba Wakenya tu na amani, kwa sababu tukipoteza nchi hatutakuwa na mahali pengine watoto wetu watakaa na sisi wetu.
All right, that's what the residents of Baringo had to say after NASA was heckled there and even had to cancel a rally over that situation. One of the people there saying that we wanted them to know that this is a Jubilee zone and Raila should forget about State House. But there's something else that comes out of this conversation. The issue of leaders saying Uhuru is welcomed to this place, but the deputy president is not welcomed. Places like Kisumu are largely perceived to be the opposition zone. Does it mean that Uhuru as an individual is making inroads in such areas, and there is a probability of him getting more votes than he got in the past election in these areas, regardless of how his deputy is perceived?
Yeah, I think there's a sense in which, as the incumbent, I think you can easily tell that he has access to almost all regions in this country, which was not the case before. Even in 2002, when Moi was going around with him, it was almost impossible for Moi to go with him to parts of Luo Nyanza. But I don't think it is so much about Uhuru as a candidate as it is about Uhuru as a president. That as a president is a symbol of national unity, and therefore he is welcome to go everywhere. But if you look at the sentiments from the people of Luo Nyanza, you get a feel that this is not about this election. This is about what happened in the last general election. And the reason why there is a lot of, resentment against the deputy president are two. One are the pronouncements that he makes elsewhere. The moment you have these scathing attacks, about a political leader who has a following, you are likely to get the wrath of the followers, and that is what is happening. And then secondly, you also realize that in 2013, Ruto was going to be the deputy president whichever way he went. If he had gone with Raila, he would still be the deputy president. The only difference would be Raila would be the president and not Uhuru. He chose to go with Uhuru, and he made Uhuru the president. And I think there are people in a big chunk of Nyanza who have not forgiven him for that. So you combine the fact that he took the presidency away from Nyanza to Central, and the fact that his pronouncements sometimes, appear to disparage, the persona of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, makes it a very hostile ground for him. But coming back to your question, I think Jubilee is making inroads in Nyanza, and I think they are trying to use the presidency as a symbol of unity to entrench themselves. They go opening a private sector, initiative, but in the process they take advantage of that. They remind the people of Kisumu that the reason why this is coming to Kenya is because we've created a business-friendly environment. This is going to help you, help your farmers who do sorghum and millet and so on and so forth, which is very critical. But just to respond to what this must say, that this has nothing to do with the Director of Public Prosecution, IEBC. This is a political situation. Intolerance anywhere in this country is a threat to tolerance everywhere. And as you can see, this heckling is becoming retaliatory. So what they are doing is, you heckled our person, you're also going to heckle your person. And I think it's incumbent upon the political class to come together and say that, it is not about individuals. It is about ideas that we have for taking this country forward. And I want to say that I like what Moses Kuria did, when he came out and said that he will be attending Raila's rallies in central Kenya just to ensure that no one heckles Raila. He's actually doing that for the sake of democracy, so that people listen to Raila and they reject him, not because he's Raila, because he's in NASA, because he's Luo, but because they don't identify with how he wants to take the country forward. He's also doing that to ensure that when Uhuru goes to Kisii, Uhuru goes to Kuria, Uhuru goes to Migori, where I come from, people listen to him and they reject him on ideas, and not necessarily because he's Uhuru Kenyatta and he has a running mate called His Excellency William Samoei Ruto.
What do you think about Jubilee's strategy, as Hesbon says, of using the president as a symbol of unity to make inroads in areas largely perceived to be opposition strongholds?
The president is the president of the whole country, and besides that, he also has a persona, and his persona is a bit more warm, is a bit more charming, is a bit more likable. And that is why he's welcome. Of course, that is comparative, so you can use any other person. But among the people going for the presidency, is a bit more acceptable than most. And he's also not very polarizing, honestly. I think the only times that he probably takes a polarizing stand is when he's in central Kenya, if I may say that. And you listened to Raila when he went there. He actually started playing victim. The way he was called Njamba, and now he's called Kemodo, he's called Mogoroki. And if you notice, those are terms that are used by His Excellency only when he's talking to. But when he's outside, he's really sensitive about what he says. And that is why he doesn't annoy anybody so much to a point of them reacting to whatever he says. I think his people skills is much more advanced in a way that he rarely really annoys people to an extent that they feel like they need to express it before him. That you have to give to him, and that is why mostly you don't find such open hostility directed at him.
This was the kind of hostility that is directed towards Deputy President Ruto. What effects would it have on President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election bid?
Well, number one, the deputy president, you have to give him, you have to appreciate he's got so many assets. Number one is the gift of the gab. He's able to read an audience and move a crowd. Number two, mobilization. And number three, he's got very high energy levels. and he has declared his political ambitions well known. In the process, he's created so many political enemies that he did not ever, I doubt whether he ever anticipated that he was going to have these large number of political enemies. If you go to central Kenya, the so-called Jubilee independents, all of them are victims of the deputy president. When you look at Kavogo, you look at Peter Ken, everybody who lost during the Jubilee party primaries, whether it was free, fair or credible, is another story, but they blame him for their mischief. When you go to sections of the Kisii community, they blame him for the post-election violence in 2007. And that's why most people tell President Kenyatta that in some regions, when you're going to engage in campaigns, you're well advised not to go with your deputy, because he's able to, again without effort, create unnecessary emotional reaction from people. Because it's very surprising. Everybody knows that you don't have a President Kenyatta running alone. He's got a running mate called Ruto. So when you vote for Kenyatta, you're voting for Ruto. But people, even the audience who are Jubilee branded, are saying, we don't want Ruto to speak to us. We want Kenyatta to speak to us. When Kanu was cutting a deal with Jubilee, Gideon Moi said, we are supporting President Kenyatta, we are not supporting the deputy president. So because of that, it's created unnecessary issues for President Kenyatta. But also President Kenyatta knows that the deputy president has got a very strong hold over Rift Valley politics, at least a portion of it before Governor Ruto came in. So he needs to have him backing him. But at the end of the day, when you look at the numbers, if President Kenyatta had a wish and had a clean slate, he would not be running with the deputy president, because in as much as he's got a lot of assets, he comes in with liabilities, which create unnecessary emotional reactions. Like for instance, the president is not a very happy man when you're standing there, your deputy is addressing the audience, and people are just shouting, branded in your Jubilee colors, meaning that it's actually your money that has mobilized them. It's your money that has printed those t-shirts, but they're openly saying, Atutaki Ruto, Atutaki Ruto. But at the end of the day, maybe the lessons to carry forward from a communications perspective, the deputy president needs to be very careful with his language. You cannot start calling your competition as Muganga, Vitendawili. In as much as it's a communication strategy to deliver a certain message, most of us do not look at it as a communication strategy. We look at it as insults. And but you know, you have to commend President Kenyatta yesterday at the funeral of Ole Nkaiseri. He was very specific. He said he wants people to be very careful. He told his supporters not to treat anybody with disrespect, that anybody who is going to speak has to be given the opportunity. But now the ball sits squarely with the deputy president, that he must be very careful with his language, not to annoy people. Okay, and you have all mentioned IEBC adversely, saying it's time for them to step in. Let's just take a look at what the chairperson of Wafula Chebukati had to say about the levels of political intolerance in the country currently.
This show of political intolerance should not be condoned in a democracy like ours. The objective of the Electoral Code of Conduct is to provide a conducive environment for free, fair and credible elections. The Commission has therefore dispatched its team of investigators to collect more information on the above cases and others. We wish to reiterate that under the provisions of the Electoral Code of Conduct, the Commission could take several measures, including fining offenders, suspending campaigns in areas prone to violence, and or barring candidates participating in the election. We call on all candidates, political parties, and their supporters to conduct their campaigns with utmost restraint and in strict adherence to the Electoral Code of Conduct.
Code of Conduct, some of the things there that Chebukati says look very good on paper.
Actually, you know, what people don't understand is that it's not just on paper. Actually, IEBC has been meting out some actions on politicians who have caused chaos, who have gone against the Electoral Code of Conduct. It's actually in the public domain that there is one candidate from Rarieda who has actually been barred from contesting. He was fined 250,000. He refused to pay. He went to the High Court. It upheld the ruling, and is actually out of the race. And it was a very simple offense, using images of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga on his poster, which is an electoral offense because he's an independent candidate. In Migori, where I come from, I think the two gubernatorial candidates, you know, have been dealt with, not once, not twice, and they still have a case. Why? Because of electoral offenses and intolerance. Because we have these two people who think that they have followers, and it has been chaos after chaos. When President Kenyatta went there, you know, he was heckled shoes were thrown at him. The other time, Joho went with his team. There was a trouble. A few guys were injured. They've been disciplined. So it's not that IBC is not doing anything. But just like I say, this is not just about IBC. This is also about the political players. And politicians must come out. If you are a fan of football like I am, when there is a problem in the field, the referee does not stop the fans and tell the fans, now you have to behave for the game to go on. The referee takes a back seat. It is upon the players to decide. It is upon the officials of the clubs to decide, are you going to quell your fans or not? And I expect politicians to do that, because this is a contest. If you believe that you have what it takes to win an election, then it is also in your own interest to ensure that even the campaign period is relatively peaceful, so that when you win credibly.
Kavemba, is the IEBC doing enough in terms of quelling the intolerance that is being witnessed in the country currently?
Comparatively, they've done much more than they've ever done in terms of reining in politicians. We have to give them. Like my fellow panelists has put it, they've actually summoned enough candidates because of these issues, political violence, issues of putting the portraits of candidates, yet you are an independent. And it is the first time we are saying that. Initially, we used to wait for these matters to be brought up during political petitions. At least now we are seeing them being handled during the campaign. And credit goes to the IEBC, because that is the kind of assertiveness we want these independent institutions to start bringing forth, so that we also build more confidence. Probably, I think they need to enhance their capacity in getting to the root cause of these things, and also getting to know who are culpable, so that we don't have business as usual after some of these incidences, because that way then Kenyans will come to realize that actually this Election Offences Act means something, and that there is repercussions, because clearly no one has a right to go and interfere with anybody else's political activity. If you don't like them, if you don't like their message, keep off. That is what the law says, because everyone has a right to go and sell their message in any part of this country. So I think I wouldn't want to blame the IEBC, because like I've said, comparatively, as compared to all the previous elections, this is the first time that the IEBC has come out to assert itself and to ensure that they hold those culpable accountable for whatever offences that they commit, more than ever before. So I think they're doing a good job. They probably need to enhance their capacity, so that their reach and effectiveness in identifying the culprits is much more enhanced.
In my view, IBC has done the bare minimum to stay afloat as far as the political intolerance is concerned. Like you recall, there was a ban in CIA when they said the politicians will not campaign for an entire week, which was a very good move. The example Esmond gives is frying a very small fish. They need to go for the big fish, because when you're looking at a candidate, you're telling you're not going to run, and yet you're ignoring when presidential candidates or even gubernatorial candidates are engaging in open mischief is unacceptable. And we cannot let this space to only politicians, because as we approach elections, the politicians are becoming irrational. They're becoming desperate. They're going to engage in any mischief. So expecting politicians who are competing for power to be rational and have the best interest of the normal voter at heart that's a very tall order. Most of the things the politicians are doing are bordering on crime. So there's a penal code which is supposed to take care of that. In as much as IBC has got limited powers on this, but we expect the DPP, the relevant persons, to come in. Because you cannot have somebody throwing a stone at the president, then you say, well, this is a political issue. It's not a political issue. And
that was my next question. IEBC is raining on the politicians, but what about their supporters? That's now the space of the CID, the DPP, the ones who are supposed to come. For instance, when we were told that when Raila Odinga was in parts of Central Province, people took stones, boulders, throwing stones at his car. It doesn't need to be a political season. That's criminal. And we'd expect that the local police commander would have initiated investigation, so that we have that guy appearing before a chief magistrate and he's been sent in for, 10 years, whatever the penalty is, so that we are able to see if you break the rule of law or if you break any law in Kenya, there's consequence. But here you throw a stone at Raila Odinga, you go back home in the evening, you have a drink with your mates, and you are regarded as a hero. The local guy who is running for Senate or MP comes, he buys you 2 beers. You become a village celebrity. You throw a stone at the president, nothing happens. You become a celebrity. These guys are supposed to be serving time behind bars. We cannot trust
irrational politicians to be in charge of our law and order.
All right. All right, I would like us to take a short breather. Coming back, we take a look at the new pay structure released by the SRC on state officers, members of parliament, seemingly the biggest losers in this new structure given out by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. So don't go too far. We'll be analyzing that in a bit. This is Sunday edition.